Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick, and we're here to talk about the 53-man roster that the Ravens finally released tonight after several hours of waiting, about 3 hours and 46 minutes after the deadline for the cuts. They published the roster to everybody in an email that I got literally at 7:46 p.m. So it's weird. The Ravens, for whatever reason, really want to announce as late as possible. Everybody uses the same waiver wire tomorrow. Maybe they feel somehow it's an advantage to announce late. And maybe they actually had some issues to work through in terms of figuring out if somebody should be some particular type of IR. Anyway, joining me to discuss this tonight is Matt Ruff. Matt, how you doing?
Yeah, excited time of year, Ken. We almost have football back. Now we have a team, so looking forward to getting into it.
It's great to go through this. So we'll start at the QB, where no surprise at all. Jackson and Rush are on the team. Devin Leary is cut. Not even sure Devin Leary is the guy they bring back for the practice squad. Could be somebody else from outside.
Yeah, I'd be okay with it. I'm not all for it. I don't think I've seen NFL level caliber talent. I agree with what you and Jim Zipcode were talking about, which was once you get past the top 20, 25 quarterbacks, there's not all that much talent out there. So you do have to deal with that and try to groom a backup. But I don't think I have any sort of allegiance to Leary, whether he's here or not. I also don't know if there's anything that great floating out, on the wire either. So pretty lukewarm on Leary. Not sure if we can really upgrade there.
Might be Tyler Huntley is the guy that they could get back on, maybe on the practice squad. He might want to be a backup quarterback somewhere. He does have some sort of a history, at least in the league. Let's move on to wide receiver. 6 players on the roster, exactly the 6 expected: Flowers, Bateman, Hopkins, Wallace, Walker, and Wester. So Wester nails down the punt return. Wallace, the special teams ace. Walker, a guy who they're hope can develop, and in fact, I would hope could take Hopkins' job at some point this year. I think would be great. And then Flowers and Bateman, the top 2 receivers on the team.
Yeah, pretty chalkboard for wide receiver. I think this is what most people had here. I wasn't sure if they were going to try to IR Hopkins. I know he'd been dealing with some minor bumps and bruises in camp, but thought maybe they'd IR him for for the 4-week period and be able to sneak someone else on. But glad to hear that he's ready to go, and maybe he'll be a good red zone target for them. So pretty standard issue board here. They still have some of the vets that they like in Miller and Kirkwood that could be on the practice squad. I think those guys are pretty professional receivers and can plug in as needed, as we saw with Miller in the playoff game last year.
Yeah, they went through a lot of veteran receivers, including one who was released yet again today, Deontay Johnson, who's had a strange saga. You know what, though? I think it was Harbaugh's fault that we couldn't get him rolling here in Baltimore. Just would not design plays for him.
Yeah, that's right.
Not figure out how to fold him into the offense, because he's only gone down in flames at about 4 organizations since then. Seriously, a truly bad run for Johnson, and I think he needs to figure it out in terms of what it is, and that may mean a lot of things that I don't want to speculate on. But I think he really needs to figure it out. Let's go back to the other wide receivers, Miller and Kirkwood. You mentioned already. I'm not real crazy about having a veteran-only wide receiver group. I'd like to be developing someone. The guy who was probably the 2 guys who were maybe the best chance to develop younger receivers, Guillory, was sent to IR for the year. Mm-hmm. And Wade is put on IR, but I didn't see the DTR designation. So I'm not sure if he is on IR and just not yet designated to return, or he is an IR for the year that they can't recover. And the only reason I could see that the Ravens would want to do that is if he has some sort of split contract where he earns less if he's on IR, then that might be a reason why they would IR him instead of putting him on IR DTR. But apparently had some sort of shoulder injury, which is unfortunate because he made a really nice play. And he's a guy who could plug and play for Wester if he's available at some point this season. So I hope he's a guy anyway that can still designate to return if the need arises.
Yeah, and also with where he is in his career, you don't want to lose this time, this
Oh yeah.
developmental time, right? Like there every year there are so many new guys coming into the league, and when you're undrafted like Wade, there are a lot of players at your skill level, and you're really trying to impress a coach, catch someone's eye, and it just sucks for him to have an opportunity at this point in time.
Yeah. A preseason superstar a year ago, one of the guys I thought really showed out and I thought would certainly get an opportunity at the punt return position if they needed that done at some point during the year, could also handle some gadgetry. And they had exactly that need, and they never used him. They went through Miller, Sims, Kirkwood. They went through Deontay Johnson. They went through all these guys, but they never gave Wade a chance. So something is going on that we're not privy to. Something in practice probably that made him not as much of an option. And yet he comes to camp, and they wanted him again for camp this year.
Mm-hmm.
So all this is just a little surprising to me. But I would think they'll probably only carry 2 receivers on the practice squad would be my guess. We'll figure that out, by the way. We'll just have that discussion with Voss on Friday about the practice squad, as that's named. This really, to be timely, this had to be done tonight so we can put it out tomorrow. The tight end position, Andrews, Likely, Kolar, Ricard. The big discussion there was whether or not Likely would start the season on IR DTR, which would have meant the Ravens couldn't use him for 4 weeks. In a way, this is good news for Likely, but I do expect him to be an inactive for at least the start of the season. And then reportedly, he was back at practice running on the side or whatever and getting a bunch of hugs from his teammates, which at least is nice to hear.
Yeah, I mean, that the start of the season is brutal, but you go in with a healthy roster, so you don't need to have your entire 53 ready to go. You can have someone like Likely on the roster who maybe he misses the Bills game and the Browns game, right? Hopefully you don't need Likely to beat the Browns. You're probably not going to have him against the Bills. So, can you get him back for the week 3, which I think is the Lions and then the Chiefs after that? So, really tough games coming out of the gate. And if you can get him back after those first 2 weeks, I think that will make the team stronger. And, you talk about this all the time, Ken. Sometimes it's not easy to find inactives. Likely gives you an easy inactive the
for
first
2 weeks. Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So I would agree with that. And I've labeled him as such in the spreadsheet we're kind of jointly looking at as we do this pod. I did think that it was a possibility that getting Likely on the roster would allow you to keep 10 offensive linemen and also keep Rasheen Ali. At the running back position, the Ravens kept Henry, Hill, Mitchell, and Ali. Of course, I've got Ricard as a fullback in there. Should also mention Lucas Scott, because I've got him in the running back category, but he's the same position as Ricard. Basically, he's a tight end / fullback, and a guy who did get cut. I'm sure they want him back on the practice squad, and there's not a 0% chance that he gets claimed. There's a chance that one of the other fullback needy teams will see what he did in this preseason and take him away from the Ravens.
Yeah, interesting group. I think a lot of us are surprised that they went with the 4 running backs. John signaled that a couple days ago, which also was a little odd that he signaled that piece. He's usually pretty tight-lipped about this stuff. I think that you can find 4th running backs pretty frequently across the league. Maybe spare the year where all the running backs got hurt and we were picking up the 65-year-old running backs for the season. But with that season aside, I wasn't thrilled about the Ali piece, but I'm hoping that he's got something that the coaches are seeing in practice that we're just not seeing. I'm just not sure I find all that much value in the 4th running back / kickoff returner number 2 position. I thought you could put someone like Wallace back there, maybe Tez Walker. You could do Wester as well. So I thought they had some options, but maybe he shake and bakes and really can make a difference with both him and Keaton back there on the kick return. So
they're definitely taking some chances on the offensive line by not activating Ali and also activating Likely. I mean, it's if they really want a running back to return kicks, and it's really important to them early on in the season. First of all, you got a couple of guys you could have on the practice squad. I mean, I'm sure you can get Dearness Johnson back on the practice squad. Ali could be there too. I don't think the chance of him being claimed is terribly high, 15 to 20% maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure the drop off is enough to Dearness Johnson from Ali that I care that much. If he's my second guy returning kicks, am I that upset about it? Or somebody else that they might like across the league that's gives them more of that one foot in the ground cutback zone blocking zone run play guy. I'm not sure that I can't find another one.
Yeah, and I think we're going to need we're probably going to need 5 or 6 NFL weeks of data to really assess for ourselves what does this kickoff look like with the new positioning this year. Who is the most successful? Is it more of the quick running backs? Is it the wide receivers that are a little bit more slender, maybe a little speedier? Obviously, a lot of people think it lends itself to the zone read. But I don't know anyone really knows until there's 100 or 200 games in the books across the league and people really see what happens. I don't have anything against Ali aside from the fact that I thought he was known for putting the ball on the turf a little too often in college, which was something that I think John is relatively allergic to.
He did that in the last preseason game. He fumbled on a at the end of a play and recovered it himself. The previous game, a ball went right through his hands for an interception.
Right.
So he's had multiple problems with putting the ball on the ground, even with the Ravens. He had a fumble on a kickoff return at the end of a play where he was ruled down last year. Mm-hmm. So there's been a few incidents since he came to the Ravens.
Yeah, it's a little shocking to me that he's got the proclivity for fumbles. I don't think he's the best third down back because I don't think he's the best pass blocker. I don't think he's the best receiver, as evidenced by the interception in the Cowboys game, which was a bit comical. Yeah. I mean, it's happened to everyone, but we're not all professional running backs either. It seems odd that last spot was really reserved for him. But hopefully they think that having both him and maybe Keaton back there gives them some sort of advantage, and hopefully we'll start to see some data on it after the first few weeks.
Yeah, I'll say this: I don't want Ali getting a meaningful carry for the Ravens this year. If he's in there at the end of a game to close it out, that's fine. Mm-hmm. If he's in there, because we got a 3-touchdown lead, or because we're down 4 touchdowns, mm-hmm. Either of those things happen. It's fine. Put Ali in there. Mitchell is not someone I want to take a chance with under those circumstances. But boy, he's so far behind those other running backs in terms of his actual what he brings to the table as a threat with a football that I would not want that. Okay, so we have 16 positions we've assigned between quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, and running back, which meant since you do typically are 25, 25, and 3, that we were going to see 9 offensive linemen. By the way, Jim Zipcode and I went through a long discussion last night. It's worth listening to it, I think, on the offensive pod. But Jim really thought this was the year, if ever, they were going to go 26 and 24. And I do basically agree with him that, if you're ever going to do it, mm-hmm. a year where you have a whole bunch of young, talented players on the defense that you have to cut is a great year to make it a 26-24 year. But basically, another way to look at this is they took Rasheen Ali for that second kick return position ahead of Jalen Armour-Davis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. I mean, because the end of the roster, it's a few people. It was Jalen Armour-Davis. It was Dellinger, the interior offensive lineman. There was maybe Braid as well, although I think Braid was behind those guys. So they really chose Ali, which means that they must really see something in him. Marquise Robinson at corner also was at least held his own. Again, it was against third stringers mostly, but still you can't argue the guy's production was pretty darn good with the opportunity he was given. So the Ali thing, I mean, maybe they really are seeing something from him in camp. I mean, Ken, did you see anything special in camp? When I know you can't see everything, they're on 100 different fields when you're out there, but did you see Ali? Was he really adept at this kick return? Or you're on mute, Ken.
Okay, everybody get that on their bingo card. Yeah, that's true. You sometimes you don't really see these kind of things. They didn't practice the kickoff return as much as I would have expected. It was probably more punt returns this mm-hmm. summer. When they did do kick returns, you're not really getting the same sense of it. They did a little bit against the Colts where they got 2 returns for each pairing of 3 different kickoff return pairings during the joint practice. And you think about how little an opportunity with real live fire that is. The 69-yard run back, I think it was 69, that he had in the first game against the Colts. It was the first game. Mm-hmm. was a well-blocked play. I thought he followed his blocks well. I didn't think there was anything spectacular about it from his own way. In fact, he got slowed down a little bit by the kicker, which caused him to not score a touchdown on that play. It caused him to be able to get run down. It was good, but because it's always good to have a run back like that. But I didn't think so much of it was on him. I think it was a well-blocked play more than that. They let so much talent go on defense, though. Armour Davis is a 1-year player. I don't look at Ali as a 3-year player. Yeah, he's got 3 years if things happen to work out. But how are things going to work out for him with this set of 3 running backs ahead of him? Somebody could get hurt, and then he could get an opportunity, and he could play well. That's how it could work out.
Sure.
But do I really believe there's a high probability of that? Haven't really seen it so far. Haven't really seen a reason to believe.
Especially when you compare it to even just Dearness Johnson, just the other running backs they had on the roster. He didn't seem to pop more than they did. And again, I feel like John has always really disliked running backs who put the ball on the ground. Flat out. He always has ever since he's been here. Number 2, when you're a 4th running back, you have to bring some sort of pass defense when you're protecting the quarterback, right? You've got to bring that in that role, or you've got to have really good hands and go out on routes. We haven't seen the good hands to go out on routes. We haven't seen the good pass protection. So if you fumble, if you can't pass protect and you can't catch, then you would have to be the second coming of Adrian Peterson, right? From a
Devin Hester,
ball. Right, exactly. Like you really would have to bring some serious plus traits that I'm not seeing jump off the screen. I actually came into the offseason. I was pretty sure he was going to get cut.
Yeah, I thought so too. And actually, I think Jeff Z did the expectation series with Ali. And we both basically had the same reaction, that he was, on the dealing with a bubble situation here. I thought if he made the team, which I thought Harbaugh had kind of already set up, that it was probably going to mean likely was on IR. I don't like how it manifested itself in the offensive line either. They took some chances there I'm not happy about. You have a 10-man offensive line. Carson Vincent probably is not going to see time this year. Now, admittedly, he's played very well the last 2 games. They've been long trials against 2s and 3s, though. And while I am very happy about where he is, what he's done with his initial opportunity in the NFL, that's fantastic to see. I still think there's a long way to go. So, you're down now to 8 guys they have because they've got 9 on the roster. Vincent has to stay. Okay. And then they got Stanley, Rosengarten, and Noteboom for tackles. And then they got a 5 to make 3 on the inside, which is about as balanced as you could be with Linderbaum, Fa'alele, Voorhees, and then Cleveland and Bullock. You've got replacements at guard, replacement at center. Bullock's can do either, and maybe Cleveland can move out to right tackle if you had a nuclear scenario where you had something really go wrong with 2 injuries.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ken. It does feel like they could be 1 short here. I do think that the fact that they like Dellinger, they like Dalcourt, the likelihood that one of them gets onto the practice squad, you would have to think could happen. So maybe that gives you your extended 10th man. I do think offensive line is more important than the 4th running back. That's hard for me to argue otherwise. But maybe they do think that they've got Cleveland and Bullock and Noteboom to really back this thing up. And maybe come week 8 or week 9, they think Vincent could maybe plug in there. Again, he's playing a little bit better than we could have thought, but that doesn't mean that he's going up against TJ Watt in the preseason. There's big talent gap there. So
you got 4 guys though who are going to be gone next year,
right?
Or could be in Cleveland, Fa'alele, Linderbaum, and Noteboom. And this seems like if ever there was a time to really focus on having another young guy that you really thought could be good on the roster, this would be a good time. If it was Dellinger or Dalcourt, pick your guy. Whoever you think is the better long-term solution for the Baltimore Ravens, I'd have him on the roster right now. I think it's much more important than Ali.
Yeah, I would agree. Maybe the thought process is Dalcourt was on the practice squad last year, right? No one picked him up. So maybe they're thinking this would be an easy one to slip in there. you're running a risk. I mean, we've seen what happens when offensive line play degrades over the course of the year, and it's not pretty. I mean, we've had, turnstile Cousins, we've had all sorts of, disasters at the line, and it almost destroys the entire offense if you even have one player that really is so far below that replacement level. I think I was reading a PFF article that, a couple of years ago where they said having 5 good linemen is so much better than having one really well above average player and then one below average player and the rest average. They said it's more the across the unit are the 5 at least all serviceable, right? And so trying to prevent yourself from getting past that area where you have that fall, you call it a fall off the table game, right? Where you really, really, put the chances of winning in peril. And I'm with you. I maybe they thought a lot of people passed up on Dellinger. Maybe he's still recovering from that tightrope surgery. Do you think in an ideal world they get both Dellinger and Dalcourt and Lichtenhan on the practice squad?
In an ideal world, sure. The chance of going 3 for 3 on those guys, I'm gonna put it at maybe 55 to 60%. So it's a really low chance. I think Dellinger has about a 15 to 20% chance to be claimed. I think Lichtenhan maybe is 25. Dalcourt's probably a little bit lower, just because he's a year older. He was an undrafted player too, so was Lichtenhan for that matter. But all put together,
sure,
55% maybe to get them all through.
Did you think Lichtenhan had? So I think he needs to get stronger. He needs to get some muscle mass on him, right, to kind of transform the weight into muscle, which is pretty typical. Did you think Lichtenhan had the speed to stick at left tackle specifically, like the potential?
No.
I think right tackle only.
Yeah, he has good length, so that can sometimes earn you a left tackle opportunity. I just don't think his feet are particularly good.
Right.
And he showed up better this summer as a run blocker than as a pass blocker. Now at Oregon, I think he was Oregon State, whichever he played at, he was a decent pass blocker. But I wouldn't really be excited about him as a player. I think that he represents what's happened to the replacement level at offensive tackle in the National Football League. It's just they're like quarterback. There just aren't that many people who can play tackle at all, but left tackle in particular. And if you have a big drain going from right to left, it also degrades the right tackle position. So you might end up needing a player like Lichtenhan, and he's in a limited size and shape group at the kind of length he has and the height he has. So he could be lost. He's definitely the highest percentage of the 3 guys to be taken away. So anyway, the player we haven't talked about, we need to do that, is Emory Jones, who's on NFI still. Now, the Ravens are highly incented to keep him on NFI for the entire year, and with each passing week, it becomes less and less likely that he'll return to play. But same rules apply to him as anybody on IR. He's got to sit out the first 4 weeks now, but then he can come back as early as week 5. Then he has a 3-week. He could start practicing, I believe, as early as week 2. But anyway, when he starts practicing, there's a 3-week window, and then he'll have to be activated. And if he's not, then he'll revert to IR after that. And I believe when he reverts to IR, I'm not 100% sure that it's a season-ending IR because he's coming from NFI original. If he was going from IR and then he's brought back onto practice, then you'd lose him for the season at the end of that. So he's a guy. They did that with Malik Ham, one of his 2 years. It might have been 23. So anyway, for the offense, I mean, I know there are people who think Jones is going to be back. I think there actually is a strong incentive for the Ravens to leave him on NFI the entire year.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. I don't understand how an offensive lineman who had shoulder surgery could be in the condition to come back and play. I mean, maybe if he was someone like Marshall Yanda, who is a Hall of Fame level talent, right, who had years under his belt, could do that. But he's a rookie. Even though he came from a good program in LSU, but you need the strength, you need the practice reps, you need the continuity with the line. He doesn't have any of that. Yeah, I just don't know. I don't think the Ravens, to your point, Ken, they've no incentive to bring him back. You might as well put him on the NFI list for the whole year. let him get strong and healthy, and then you have 4 years of him in the future. I just don't think that he's going to be the difference between make or break. And, there's no point in losing that year of team control.
Yeah, I would agree. And I don't know what power Jones has in this arrangement, by the way, to say, no, I'm not really hurt and seek an injury settlement or whatever it might be,
Right.
to get out of that designation. But I know NFI designations obviously are hated by the players because the teams don't have to pay them. Now, they usually do, but they don't have to pay them. So they probably come to some agreement. And maybe it's an agreement that Jones is perfectly happy with. And he starts his NFL career after a redshirt year here the way that not really Voorhees did. So
right.
Anyway, the hope is obviously also that Jones is a tackle that can help you. He may or may not be ahead of Vincent next year in terms of whether he's ready to play. But the Ravens do have a lot of departing players, and they'll need Jones. They'll need Dellinger, I think, next year to help fill the holes in the roster that they'll have.
Yeah, I'm super excited about Vincent. While you mention him, I think that he could put 18 pounds of muscle on over the course of this year. I mean, he should be doing nothing but eat, sleep, study, lift. And he should be able to put on a lot of good weight. He should be able to get a lot smarter. He seems very coachable, and the coaching staff really likes him. So, his job is really to just soak it up, practice with the team, study, eat, lift. But I'm pretty happy for him. And on the Corey Bullock front, can't help but to be happy for him too. I love the thought of a guy redshirting in the NFL, because not everyone is these first round, second round picks that can just come in and play right away. A lot of them need to get their body in the right shape. They need to learn the system. Maybe they came from a college offense that didn't play a full NFL style of offense, and you have a lot to learn. So having Bullock really do the red shirt last year and come is great. Voorhees did the same, and it looks like, in his second year now, he's really looking to be a good player for this year. So excited to see if maybe we can redshirt some of those players as well.
Right, and this would be Voorhees' third year. Otherwise, we'd be talking about him being a free agent after the 26 season. Now it's after the 27 season, so it could really work out. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball. So we've used up 25 of the spots, and of course, we don't even have to say the Wolfpack made it, so that takes up 3 more. So you've got 25 on defense. The interior defensive line, there's no real surprises here. Matabike, Jones, Washington, Peebles, and Jenkins made the team. The only guy who was really on the border was Jenkins in terms of whether or not the Ravens would take a chance on one of 2 young nose tackles that they have. CJ Okoye, or you might call him Basil Okoye. I think that's his given name, but CJ is what he's known by. And Jason Jones out of Auburn. Both those guys made a bid early in the preseason to unseat Jenkins. It would have been a significant savings, but in the end, I don't think either of them played well enough. Jenkins was given starter treatment in the final game, and he gets the spot, although they were very slow to announce it.
Yeah, they definitely were. I thought there was something going on there with Jenkins. I think at the end of the day, you're playing a very tough schedule in the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season here. John Jenkins is no BS. He's been around the league. You can plug and play him almost anywhere in the role that he's going to play. When you compare him to someone like CJ Okoye, CJ Okoye, he could get gassed at any time. He's got potential, strong dude. He could certainly play, but I think he needs another year on a practice squad of just trying to get his body right to really be able to use his size appropriately, manage his energy throughout the process. And then when you look at Jones, he's already getting his body into better shape, right? He looked a little bit more like the Michelin Man at Auburn. He maybe cut 18 pounds, coming into the Ravens here, which is a great improvement. But I still think he needs a year of body work to truly be there. And so, the Ravens can't afford to come out of the gate slowly. And so John Jenkins, you know what you get with him. I also was scared that they might try to run with 4 defensive linemen, which I guess they could do if they don't activate all 5. That terrifies both of us. They tried to play that during the Tampa Bay game last year. Didn't work out well at all. So, I think they need Jenkins in there. I think he can take some snaps off of Travis Jones's plate and help keep him fresh throughout the season.
So the other guy that we haven't talked about yet is Brent Urban. And Brent Urban was cut It was completely expected. He sat out the last game after playing a few snaps in the previous game. I guess he played a few snaps against the Colts as well, but he got almost no playing time in the preseason. I assume that the conversation originally between the Ravens and Urban, who's an NFL survivor and multiple-time handshake player, is a guy is that he would start on the practice squad, and that's obviously what they intend to happen. I don't imagine there's a claim. I'm sorry, there can't be a claim out there because he's a vested veteran. So he can move immediately to the Ravens practice squad without having to clear waivers. Okoye and Jones need to clear waivers, and both of those guys are size and shape guys. The question is, has either of them done enough that somebody else will take a chance? Now, Okoye actually has some strikes against him because he's been 2 years on the LA Chargers practice squad already before this. So there are legitimate questions about whether or not, if he's not ready now, how long is it going to be? Do we want this guy at age 30? Do we, how long do we want CJ Okoye for? In the case of Jones, I think it's very possible he could get taken. I think in Okoye's case, it's probably a 20% chance, maybe in Jones a little higher, 25 maybe. And I could be a little high on both of those, but I still think there is a chance that one of those two will be taken. It's a size and shape position, and anyone is short a nose tackle. Baltimore has a couple of guys who are the right size and shape.
Yeah, agreed. I also think that while it is a size and shape position, there are some players that can be had midway through the year. Think like Jelly Ellis or D'Amato Pecco types, where they may be a little bit older, but if you need a nose tackle who's going to stuff the run and be competent doing it, they can come in and do it. I think that, a lot of people every team passed up on Jones every single round, right? Which is why he was an undrafted free agent. I'm not sure if people are banging down the door for him. I think it could happen. He did put some tape out there. But I'm hoping that's one of those players who you redshirt him this year on the practice squad. He, converts a little bit more of that fat to muscle, learns the playbook a little bit better, and then, really gives him a good class starting next year.
Yeah, he certainly could fill in for an injury to a nose tackle, either one of them, if one were to occur. So could Okoye. Urban, I think he's got more strategic value than that even. So the thing I've been talking about on this thing, we had an interior defensive line depth concern pod that we're doing. It'll be up a little bit later, but Peebles is primarily a pass rusher. And, they used him 16 times out of 18 in his last game to rush the passer. So I think that's what they want him for. I think he's a close the game out guy when you're beating a team badly. I think he's a guy you bring in on some third down, so that typically you're going to want Madubuike and Jones on those. I think if there are other cases where it's the end of a half or it's a team's down 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter and they really have to pass the ball, I think that's when Peebles can really help you. So I'm happy that he's around, but it gets a team where you think you're going to face a more neutral game script consistently. It might be they'd like to have Urban over Peebles, and they can do that with 3 elevations. They can do that with Urban to start the year, and at some point there may well be an injury to one of the 3 non-nose tackles. If that occurs, then I would say Urban is probably the obvious replacement.
Agreed.
All right, let's move over to edge. 4 guys that nobody had any question about: Owe, Van Noy, Robinson, and Green. And everybody's excited about Mike Green. I am too. David Ojabo is on the roster. I haven't heard anybody say anything about really being excited about that.
I haven't heard anyone say anything about Ojabo, really. I was thinking, when you're thinking about the roster, your brain goes into the more complex, maybe more fantasy scenarios, but you're thinking to yourself, man, you could save a couple $1 million on the cap. You might be able to get a 7th round pick. I know that's nothing to write home about, but I don't know if anyone's ever seen anything exciting out of Ojabo unless he's completely unblocked, in which case he becomes incredibly exciting, which doesn't really mean much in the NFL, right? So a little surprised. I think the Adisa Isaac injury left the door open. Hopefully he'll be able to come back in 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks. Ojabo doesn't play much on special teams. Seems like he'd be a pretty obvious inactive week to week. But I don't know why you would want a pretty obvious inactive week to week to be costing you $2.7 million. Yeah. I'm not sure I understand that. I don't know if they're still trying to trade him. I don't think so at this point.
Yeah, they
But what
could
are your
still.
thoughts there, Ken?
They still could trade him because I think the replacement would be somebody like Clowney, or the replacement could be Millie Cam.
Yeah,
Honestly, Millie Cam played very well this preseason. He's a serviceable fifth linebacker. He can certainly be in there to replace either a Sam or a rush guy if you have a need for a particular week.
play
And
special
Frank,
teams.
but yeah, sure, play special teams, much better athlete than a Jabo. So I think we'd be talking about you've got the replacement there. I think Ham is on the practice squad for sure. And I think if they want to make a move to get a pass rush because they're just not happy with the way it's working out, maybe Owe and Van Noy. Maybe Van Noy. Let's pick on him for a second. He had 12 and a half sacks last year, but he's also, almost 35 years old.
Right.
What would happen if he took a step back? Well, you might really like to have Jadeveon Clowney around as another guy to generate some first pressures, and I think that would be good. So anyway, I would not take the Ajabo situation as his position is cast in stone yet. And he hasn't, by the way, they could still cut him before the opener and get out of his about $2 million of cap savings from dealing with that. So that probably is all it would cost initially to get Clowney back on the roster, and to then you'd have some incentives that you'd have to pay for later. But I think he's would be a potential choice here. So would Ham, I'd love it if Ajabo came in and all of a sudden had 6 sacks in some limited role and earns a fairly decent contract. That'd be great too. But I'm mildly pessimistic about the situation, honestly, with the fifth edge. He is, to me, what you said earlier is the most key point, is that he's probably going to be inactive for a lot of games, given the depth of this roster otherwise.
It just seems too expensive for someone who's could be frequently inactive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's an insurance policy. And then is he really good enough to replace Owe or Mike Green or Van Noy or Robinson if the situation arises? And he's not as good as any of the 4 of them, or he wouldn't be being up for a regular inactive spot. But anyway.
And you also have Isaac, who could come back, week 7 or something to that effect too. Yeah. But again, injuries happen all over the place. So
yeah, costly injury to Isaac, and that's very unfortunate for him. Very unfortunate for the Ravens. The easiest solution would have been Isaac beats Ajabo because of the relative tenure situation, and then you don't have to. When you have the 2 of them in camp, you're hoping that kind of circumstances conspire for the better result, for the better outcome, and they didn't in this case. They got a guy hurt, which forced their hand in terms of who they kept.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to inside linebacker, where one of the most exciting decisions was made. Smith, Simpson, Buchanan, and Hummel all made the team. Hummel was announced early by Harbaugh, despite the fact he was having a hand procedure done. So he cut his hand. So I guess this is some sort of a restitching or whatever related to that injury, I'm guessing. But he will be on the roster for the opener, as I understand it. Higgins was added as the 5th inside linebacker, and that was big news. He and Martin both had great preseasons. I think they'll try and get Martin on the practice squad. I'm not sure if he'll make it either.
Yeah, good to see some good young blood coming into the inside linebacking core here. I didn't see any way that they were going to get rid of Hummel. It just seemed like John Harbaugh's guy. They needed a special teams captain. He's got the slightly bigger body than your typical corner wide receiver on special teams, and so I think that they're looking to improve the special teams coverage significantly relative to last year, and they see Hummel as a big part of it. Which, to your point, means that they, in order to get someone like Higgins on the roster, you had to cut elsewhere, right? So when you see a player like Jalen Armour-Davis get cut from the team, and you see Higgins on the roster, right? I mean, that's one of those spots, right? I mean, you could say that was also Keon Martin's, but I could probably make an argument that Keon Martin was probably a little bit more important, just because the corner position is more important than inside linebacker. So when it comes to that last spot on the roster, it looks like it could be Higgins that took it. So excited for him. Would like to see what we have in Buchanan as well. Glad that Trenton Simpson was getting some pretty good reviews recently, maybe towards the second half of camp, and hopefully Roquan can get all these guys where they need to be and start making plays.
Yeah, we've there's good separation between most of the players that will get playing time that won't get playing time. There's not really that kind of question doesn't really exist. The closest questions are probably at wide receiver in terms of who should get playing time and maybe at the third safety spot. But nobody's suggesting that Higgins is going to be in there early as an inside linebacker. I think Buchanan is the backup at either Mike or Will. I think Hummel might go in to play some defense before Higgins does. But you could argue that Higgins would be the second man up, and that'd be fine. He certainly gives the Ravens an additional big on special teams, and you need tight ends, fullbacks, and inside linebackers to take up all at edge rushers to a certain degree to take up a significant portion of that special teams burden. He's one of those. He may take a player like Likely and take the same role that he had. And make it so that Likely doesn't have to be out there on special teams, for example, so that he could help the team that way.
Yeah, which would make sense. I don't think we want Likely. You certainly don't want Andrews. I mean, Kohler will certainly be on special teams, but Ken, how often is Ricard on special teams these days? I mean, I know he's getting the bumps and bruises.
Yeah, so I can actually look that up, but he plays on the kick team still. And he might play on the kick return team. No, I say the kick team, I mean the field goal team.
Okay.
But I'll have to look. I think he plays wing on the field goal team. That's my recollection. So let's look at like the 2024 regular season and see where he played there. And well, according to this, he didn't play any special teams during the 2024 regular season, which I find really difficult to believe. So I'm going to look at that one more way and see if this is the 2024 regular season special team. So come on, Patrick Ricard, where are you? Are you just hiding from me? I am surprised by this. I know Justice Hill had a greatly reduced role. No, Ricard did not play a special team snap in 2024.
I thought I recall seeing that somewhere. And yeah. I mean, here's the thing. He's had multiple hip surgeries, right? And he's getting to the point where, he plays one of the most physical positions on the field that, I can understand them wanting to not have him on special teams. However, if you think about it, if you're one of the 10 or 11, 12 teams that has a fullback, that's typically a special teams role too.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So to have a fullback that can't touch special teams is also super unique, that maybe only Kyle Juszczyk, for example, might have that privilege, right? For if you're, he's a big receiving threat, and maybe not, that's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but I don't know how many fullbacks are considered good enough to not touch the field for special teams.
Yeah. I mean, he played effectively an up blocker on kickoff returns years ago. So I'm very surprised by that, but he's apparently he didn't play any last year, and Justice Hill also converted. I think he might have played 3 special team snaps last year, and he was a guy that really signed his first extension in part because he was such a good special teams player.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's move on to cornerback. So only 6 corners on the roster. The most surprising cut of all, Jalen Armour-Davis came at cornerback, but Humphrey, Wiggins, Alexander, and Awuzie, the big 4. TJ Tampa has made it, and Keon Martin, who pulled off one of the impossible feats in the NFL, which is to win your way onto the roster in the last preseason game, had 2 tackles for loss and a pick 6. The Ravens have rarely had such an occurrence. You might have to go back to Kelly Gregg in 2001 to find an occurrence of that. But anyway, he's here. The need to cut. Let's start with the cut of Jalen Armour-Davis. Where does this rank in terms of surprises for you on roster day on a 1 to 10 scale?
So going into the preseason, I was almost assured that he was going to be cut. I thought that he doesn't offer the durability that you want to really earmark a part of the roster to, and that because his durability was so poor, he could never get to the point where he looked comfortable in the system, could never seem to get his head around for the football, which some may argue is a desired trait of the Ravens these days. I did certainly. But after watching and listening to, all of the discussions around the practices and the preseason, I was certain he was going to make it. So I was, 9 out of 10 that he was going to make it, even though going into training camp, I was probably a 1 out of 10 that he was going to make it. So um, he's from Alabama. He's from a big program, playing defense on the Ravens. You're getting coached in at least a decent way. Our secondary issues last year notwithstanding. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets picked up when he goes through waivers. But yeah, very, very surprised to see him cut. The same for you, Ken?
Yes, it'd be a 9 probably in terms of cuts that have happened. There often is a surprising cut, like around the beginning of the league year, where they're trying to shed a contract to get ready to sign players or whatnot, or could be a lot of times it would happen. But the beginning of the league year is a reasonable time. But this was just came out of the blue. I mean, it's a you want to win now year. You want a 1-year player. I mean, Armour Davis is probably the guy. And they made a 2-year move at an important position like this because Martin may or may not be better than Armour Davis this year. But I think the fact that you have him for 4 years and you look at the rest of the roster, not only was Armour Davis a free agent after this year, but Awuzie and Alexander are both free agents. And Humphrey is a guy you're going to have to, in order to keep him around, you're going to need to make a substantial financial commitment to, which they probably will. But he's signed for next year, but if he can't really play on that contract, they need to get that price down. To do that, they're going to have to extend him.
Additionally, I think with the longer beam and Kone injuries, it really threw a wrench into how they were trying to build the team, right? Fans always want to look at this year, in the year, for the year. It's like a Fortune 500 executive, right? You don't care about anything past this quarter, this season, et cetera. EDC does have longer vision, thankfully, and they were trying to rebuild the cornerback room. And having both of them go down, I think was just killer. And I think that, with what Keon Martin was doing for them, hey, you got to look at this as a 4-year investment as opposed to just a 1. Where I'm nervous here, Ken, is Humphrey has had injuries off and on. Alexander has had more than his fair share of injuries that anyone.
Enough said, yeah.
Right. End of story. And then Awuzie, he's not known for his durability over the last couple of years. So where I get worried is, okay, so you're hoping that Wiggins is really going to be the bell cow of this group, right? I mean, you're hoping Humphrey is too, right? But Wiggins is a bit younger. But as soon as, you start progressing, I mean, Alexander couldn't even make it through the preseason, and it's not like they're running the vets hard in the Ravens camp, right? This isn't, 2001 anymore. And then you very quickly get to the point where you're down to someone like TJ Tampa, who it just looks like he's a few ticks too slow for the position, not a bad player, not anything too glaring that sticks out aside from the fact that he may not have just the quick twitch agility that he needs quite to play the position. Honestly, almost looks more like a safety playing corner at times. And so I just get worried that this room that they kept 6, not 7, and it's got a lot of bodies that are 28 years old, which seems pretty young if, for any sports fan, baseball, basketball, it's, quarterbacks, et cetera.
But too young to get married, but it's kind of too old to be playing cornerback sometimes in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, corner is a hard position where you are forced to adjust to everything. It's like baseball. A pitcher controls the action. You can be 40 years old and be a pitcher. Not saying it's easy. We couldn't do it. But when you're a hitter, you're reacting to everything that's thrown at you. And that's why you're seeing the batters getting younger and younger and younger. Cornerbacks the same way. You have to adjust. You always are put in an unfavorable position. And I do get a little bit worried about some of the age that's in the cornerback room. However, the talent is undeniable. You know what I mean? This is a star-studded cast.
Yeah, it's built. The room is built for this year. And the guy who's buried on the depth chart here, who people aren't talking about right now, but Marquise Robinson is a very important player for them to keep on the practice squad. Very important. And so he's going to have to go through waivers tomorrow. And he's the one I'm most concerned about losing. They lose Bo Braid, Chandler Martin, CJ Okoye even, or maybe, I don't know if I feel the same about the offensive lineman. I might be equally concerned about losing Dellinger, say. As I would be, but they better not lose Marquise Robinson. Marquise Robinson played a lot of snaps in the preseason. In fact, he played 65 coverage snaps. He played other snaps where he's in on the run. But in 65 coverage snaps, he was targeted 10 times, on which he allowed 29 yards. opposing quarterbacks had a 56 rating throwing at him. All that information is out there for other front offices to digest and try and figure out if he's their guy. So the teams that are short on cornerback depth, and there's a lot of them, hopefully they'll take Jalen Armour-Davis first. In a lot of ways, Robinson is, well, I don't know. I'm not sure which I'm more concerned about losing at this point. Robinson is a 4-year player who I think is going to be good. Armour-Davis is a 1-year player who I think is playing the best football of his life right now.
Right.
I'm not sure who I'm more concerned about losing at this point. If I don't know how much more they would have had to see to basically say, let's give Robinson a shot over Tampa, say. But I can't. Tampa's a second-year player, is a 4th-round draft pick. They didn't want to give up on him, but they might have to move him to safety. I mean, there's other solutions they may have to go through. Anyway, Robinson is a player I'm really concerned about losing to Burrow.
Agreed. Was hoping they could find a way to squeak him on there, but after you put Ali on the team, after you put Higgins, Lowry, we'll get to in a minute, and Keon Martin, it just really ate up all those extra positions. They already went down a lineman to 9 instead of 10, so they just didn't have much wiggle room. Another player that we hadn't mentioned yet was CJ Ravenel.
Right.
Thought he had a pretty decent preseason.
Absolutely.
He did the red shirt last year. Is he someone you would like to see back on the practice squad this
absolutely. Year? Yeah, and first of all, some of these guys are going to get taken, so that'll make room. But I'm already up to about 15 on the practice squad if I include Ravenel in that group. So we 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'd be at 15 if Armour-Davis were somehow to sneak through waivers, which won't happen, by the way. But 14 with him. Then I got to get a quarterback. That's going to be my 15th, right? I only get 16. Sorry, I get 17 if I get an IPPP, and I believe Mitchell Payton would qualify for that. So maybe I still have a couple spots.
Okay.
But Ravenel, I didn't have on that group, and Ravenel needs to be. They will have one running back in that group, probably, even if you don't really need one. I don't have a running back on the roster. And then you're going to have I only have 2 defensive backs in the group. And if one of these defensive backs were to be taken, they got to go out and find another one. So I'm not sure who that would be, but if Armour-Davis and Robinson are both gone tomorrow, that would really be bad.
Do you think EDC was trying to shop Armour-Davis?
Yes.
I mean, I think they're trying to sneak Robinson, right? They're trying to sneak him onto the practice squad. That makes sense. But do you think they're trying to shop Armour-Davis and found no suitors and said, hey, we're good to pass this guy through, no one wants him? Or, obviously there's all sorts of games that are played, right?
Right. But, there's a whole bunch of people who don't want to give anything for him, but they're going to still take him as soon as he's released.
Of course.
And it's not like a player like Robinson, who you might not have room for in your roster. You're not willing to give up a draft pick, and you can sign him to your practice squad off of the Ravens practice squad. So so there's 2 stages to this. Tomorrow is waiver wire Wednesday, and everybody goes through waivers who's a year 4 or less player and is cut. And so that includes every one of the Ravens cuts, with the exception of a few players who might make it. Miller, Kirkwood, Urban. I'm trying to think if anybody else really falls into that category. Those are the only significant ones. There are some other players who have been around for a while who might be on the practice squad who they might keep around. But anyway, those are the ones who might get to the practice squad. The younger players, if they're not taken in the waiver process, then you can still sign them away. And that's like a Ben Mason sign away, where another team, New England in that case, just said, hey, look, you don't want to play behind Patrick Ricard. Come to our practice squad and you'll play behind, this guy who we're tenuous about in terms of keeping. We really need a backup fullback. And that was more attractive to Ben Mason, and the Ravens lost their 5th-round draft pick over it. Caillou Blue Kelly, they lost. Caillou Blue Kelly was a claim, so that's not the same. But they have lost players before where they just get signed away from the team. Most of the time, Sanat was a claim.
He was a claim.
He was a claim. Yeah. But there's been other players that they've lost to a sign away. And I'm trying to come up with an example, and I'm struggling with that obviously right now in terms of having the analogous situation. But Ben Mason is really the one that people remember from recent years. It's just the Ravens have to endure 2 waves of potentially losing a player like Robinson or a player like Chandler Martin might be as big a risk there, or a player like Okoye or a player like Jones. It's not going to be that attractive for both Okoye and Jones, for example, to both sign back with the Ravens, even if neither of them gets picked. So they'll make an offer to one, then maybe make an offer to both. Maybe one accepts, and the other says, you know what? Now I'll try another team.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, with Robinson, I'm concerned about that. Let's move on to the safety position because we really need to wrap this up. We've been a long time. Hamilton, Starks, Kane, and Lowry all make the team. The Lowry pick by the end of week 4 was no surprise at all. His interception, I think, all pretty well sealed up his spot on the team. The team has been desperately trying to find a back-end safety who knows to be in the right place and has instincts to read the quarterback, and I think they found it in Lowry. It's not like he's been perfect, but he's a very smart human being, and that's good to have. Ravens certainly like that in their safeties in particular, it seems. And whatever lack of athleticism, and he's faster than many safeties in the mid 4.5s, that he can certainly make up for in terms of good instincts and understanding of where he needs to be on the field. Half field responsibilities, which are what I presume will be his major responsibility, are less than single high responsibilities where you're often expected to cover about 2/3 of the field. He can cover half the field. Hopefully that's a responsibility he can handle.
Yeah, interesting group going into the off season. We didn't know what was going to happen with this group, right? We knew Hamilton, we knew Washington, and then we also knew Kane and Braid, but we weren't very comfortable with that room. Ardarius Washington goes down. They draft Malachi Starks. They pick up Ruben Lowry, undrafted. So they did a lot of work on this room, and this room definitely has some life to it, right? You assume they're going to keep Hamilton for the long haul. If they do, this is Stark's first year of potentially five. Right? Mm-hmm. Kane has 2 more years after this year, and Lowry, this is the first of 4 years. So this is a young group with some potential. Doesn't have any expensive veterans, or like we saw last year, more affordable veterans that just didn't fit in with the system, didn't fit with the program, or even if they costed $1 more than Lowry, right? This is at least a far cheaper option. So would like to see what this group can do, and hopefully, there's going to be growing pains here. People have to be patient. But we had growing pains last year, and we had a $70 million safety on the team.
Right. So Bo Braid is the guy who got cut, who I think a few people are surprised to see. It's a big special teams loss for the Ravens, by the way, and it underscores the nature of needing to have bigger players on special teams more than you need to have very good special teamers who are a little bit smaller, like Braid or Kane or Lowry. You need guys who can play safety to be able to play safety. And Braid, I think, from what we saw, was never really adapted to the back end to making big plays there. I think when we see him play slot corner a lot in these last couple of preseason games, it may be because they didn't play any dime in the preseason, and they consider Braid to be a guy who could maybe help them in the dime. At least that's my working theory right now, is that that's the closest role they had to dime back, and they could then move him to dime back if they had him on the roster during the season. Still could be. He's got elevations. I think there's more than a small chance that Bo Braid will be back on the Ravens roster at some point during 2025, and probably finish the year with the team would be, I'd say, is a pretty decent percentage chance.
Yeah, agreed. I think he'll be able to get on the practice squad pretty simply too. He's, common size shape. He's not overly athletic for the position, not overly adept at coverage, so less likely to get claimed. So Ken, if you're looking at this roster, this 53-man roster, who are the 5 inactives on game day that you have to choose?
Yeah, that's really hard.
That's a hard exercise, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm afraid we might back to the wide receiver position, because you start at the easiest cuts, and the first thing you do is any offensive lineman above 8, it's 1 inactive for each of those. So Carson Vincent is inactive on a weekly basis unless he's needed at some point.
Sure.
But when you have a 9 to make 8 room, you're already skating on the thinnest of ice, because if you lose one of your other 8 to some sort of ding up, then Vincent either becomes active, which you really don't want, because then you have 4 tackles and 4 outside or 4 inside guys, or you have to use one of your practice squad elevations for the position. and potentially not only, bring that guy up for practice squad elevations, but also expose him if he has to get playing time. And then, what that means. That's not that severe a problem, but I think you get one from the offensive line. I think initially they get one from Likely because I think he's hurt. I think, let's come back to him in a minute. I think Ajabo is inactive under the current circumstance. And I think, Tampa is a guy who's could be inactive to start the year. He's a special teams player. In theory, he's the fifth cornerback, but also he's an outside corner only, where Martin is a slot corner. So if something were to happen to Humphrey, I think Martin would be the best guy to jump in there. There is a real question as to whether Martin or Tampa would be inactive, but I would think one of those two would be inactive.
So that would make 4, right?
That would make 4, and we need to find one more. And now
Tez Walker?
Tez Walker could be the guy, or Rasheen Ali could be the guy. Although it completely contradicts the reason you put Ali on the roster, but he really could be the guy. And if you want more, if you're bringing somebody up from the practice squad to be an elevation, then you need to get an extra one for every one of those. And one of the things the Ravens have done in the past is to deactivate an interior defensive lineman. I cannot stress enough how badly I do not ever want to see that happen on game day again.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's actually when you and I started going back and forth on Twitter the first time, and this was happening, and I'm like, this is absolutely insane. Yeah. I would think, would you pull from the inside linebacking team? The only thing is, these are your special teamers, right? So Roquan, he's the star. He's not touching special teams, but Simpson, Buchanan, Hummel, Higgins, you want those guys on special teams. Those are your bigger special teams bodies. Right.
Yeah, they are, and you all you have is Kolar from the rest of the team. That really, is a big body. They don't really even have an edge anymore. I guess Tavius Robinson plays some special teams, so you've got him, but you don't have a lot of big bodies left throughout the rest of the team. It's not an ideal situation, but it might be Higgins would be an inactive too. So I guess it could be Lowry could be inactive. Lowry has not seen a lot of special teams time so far, so he may need to get acclimated to it, and they may just feel like, okay, for the start of the season, we'll go with 3 safeties. These will be our guys, and then if we need a safety during the game, somebody like Humphrey can move back there, for example.
Yeah, that's true. Humphrey, Tampa. But yeah, I mean, if you don't do that, that leaves him dangerously short on safeties, considering Kyle Hamilton doesn't play at safety a lot, or at least that's where he's really good at, right? Is moving around. So if you sit Lowry, that's really starting to handcuff you. Similarly, kind of with the 4 defensive tackles, right? The defensive linemen, you really start to get limited from what you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we'll call it there. I think I understand why they made the moves. At least I'm not sure I agree with every single one of them. And what is who's the one guy on the roster that is the biggest head scratcher to you?
To me, it's Rasheen Ali would have to be the biggest one on offense, and on defense, it would be David Ajabo. I don't understand, I don't think the value is there for the cost, the potential 7th round pick, right? So yeah, both cap cost and compensation. I think that if you have a deep defensive line like they have, with someone like Peebles, if Ajabo were to play, could Peebles take some of those snaps on the edge? I don't know if that's a perfect scenario, but I'm just not sure you get enough value from Ali or Ajabo. So I think those were the biggest head scratchers.
I'm with you exactly on that. And I guess I'm a 6 in terms of Ajabo being a head scratcher, because I think essentially this move gives them time to figure out what they want to do with Ajabo. I don't think they're committed to him for the whole season at this point. I think they could trade him, they could cut him, they've got to cut him before opening day now. So they've got 2 weeks to deal with this. But we saw that happen a couple of years ago. I guess it was 21 now. Tyree Phillips made the roster as the 11th offensive lineman. And the Eagles did that again today. The Eagles are not going to start with 10 linemen on opening day. With 11, they'll cut it to 10, but this has given them some extra time to trade a player from the end of their group that they think is still pretty good and get something for him. that may be the case of what they're trying to do with the Jabo, that they'd be okay with Ham. They're certainly good with Isaac when he returns. They might be okay going out to the market and getting a guy like Clowney. They have some options, but they need time to move some pieces around. It might be they need to manipulate some cap in order to make room for a player like Clowney, or to go and get another pass rusher. And it might be they want more of a special teamsy edge, in which case maybe Ham is your guy. So they've got a variety of options. So I'm not really surprised by that. And it's not the end of the world. If Ajabo starts the season, then he starts the season, and you might end up having to pay him for the whole year if you can't trade him or get him moved somehow. Then so you might lose some money on that deal. Ali, I don't understand it all. I don't think the value is there with the second kick returner, and I don't. He just doesn't do enough for me. He doesn't punch enough tickets to make it worth it for me to have him as the fourth running back, when the guy I'm cutting is a cornerback cut at a position where we're dangerously old and dangerously at risk of injury.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Matt, always a pleasure talking football with you. This is a great discussion, and I'm glad you could go through this with me. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at 20KidRock.
All right. Other folks out there doing the concern series now, hit me up with a DM on Twitter if you have a concern you'd like to talk about. Hopefully a 15, 20-minute discussion. You got to be passionate. I'll help you work with you on the topic to make sure you're not overlapping with somebody else. But I love to always meet some new people who want to talk football. Thanks again for listening. And Matt, thanks again for joining me.
Thanks, Ken.
We'll talk to you next time on Film Study.